All right, for our Tuesday video, we are going to continue with what we started yesterday to simplify an expression. Now, I want you to remember here what we said yesterday about this. We said there are two steps that might have to be done to simplify an expression. Step one was to distribute if necessary. And remember, you'll know it's necessary if you see parentheses in the problem. And then step two was to combine like terms if necessary. So combine the terms that have the same variable part. Now, what we're going to do today is add more negatives to these problems. Yesterday, I tried to keep, as much positive as possible. And you all know that anytime we add more negatives to a problem, negatives are a little more dangerous. They make it more likely that we're going to make mistakes. So we're going to simplify, but watch for more negatives and be really, really careful here with the signs. So I'm going to start out with a few just basic problems. So here's our first one. I'm asking you in this problem to do a -3 times 4x plus 5. Now we're going to simplify this. So remember, to simplify, the first thing I need to do is distribute if necessary. So it is necessary in this problem because I see clearly that I have parentheses and that I'm trying to multiply the -3 times this group, 4x plus 5. So -3 has to be multiplied by each member of this group. So what are those members? Well, 4x is the first member. And then remember, I'm going to let that plus stay with that 5, which tells me that he is a positive 5. So I'm going to do -3 times each of those members that I just highlighted. So when I do -3 times 4x, -3 times 4 is -12. Attach the x. And then I do -3 times positive 5. -3 times positive 5 is -15. So I'll put -15. Minus because it's negative. So I have distributed. Now I need to see if like terms need to be combined. So when I look at my first term, -12x, I need to look at his variable part. His variable part is an x. This term needs to have the same variable part, and you'll notice he doesn't. He has no variable part. So the two terms that I have on the board are not like terms. That means I cannot combine them, and -12x minus 15 would be my final answer. Distribute if you have to. Combine like terms if you have to. Once you get those two steps done, you're finished. All right, let's do -5 times 2x minus 3. Do we need to distribute? The answer is yes. You see the number -5 being multiplied by the group 2x minus 3. So each member of that group is going to get multiplied by this -5. So the first member of the group is 2x. I'm going to let that minus sign in my parentheses stay with my 3. So I know he's a -3. Each of those members that I just highlighted is going to get multiplied by this -5. So I do -5 times 2x. -5 times 2 is -10, and we reattach that x. Then we do -5 times -3, which gives us a positive 15. So put plus 15 because that's positive. Now, we finished distributing. Next, we check for the like terms. My first term is -10x. The variable part, which is what I need to be looking at, is an x. This term does not have that same variable part. He doesn't have an x at all. So these two are not like terms, which means that negative 10x plus 15 is my final answer. I could distribute on this problem, but not combine like terms. Now, on this next one, pay special attention. So to simplify, I'm going to distribute if necessary. Now, I know it's necessary to distribute because I see the parentheses in this problem. So I need to be looking in front of these parentheses to see what I'm going to distribute. What am I going to multiply times each member of the group? And what you'll notice is there's a negative here, but there's no number against those parentheses. So remember, we've talked about this. That means there is a 1 there. And I want you to write that 1 there. So we are distributing a negative 1. What are my group members? Well, my first group member is the 4x. That's the first thing inside the parentheses. I'm going to let that minus sign stay with that 7. So the second member of my group is that negative 7 that I see there. Each one of those members is going to get multiplied by this negative 1. So first, we're going to do a negative 1 times 4x. Negative 1 times 4 is negative 4, and we bring down that x and reattach it. And then we're going to finish this off with negative 1 times negative 7. And if I do a negative 1 times a negative 7, then I get a positive 7. So I'm going to put plus 7 in that answer. All right, now we've taken care of distributive property. Let's see if we need to combine like terms. So when I look at term number 1, I see negative 4x. The variable part is what I need to focus on. That's an x. The other term doesn't have that same variable part. He doesn't have that x. So what that means is, again, these are not like terms. So I don't combine those. This is just going to be a negative 4x plus 7. And that one's done. So these first 3 examples, all we've had to do is distribute. Now let's make the problem a little more complicated. So more stuff. All right, so here we go. First step on this problem is to distribute if necessary. I see parentheses, so it's going to be necessary. I'm going to distribute negative 3, that's sitting in front of my parentheses, to both members of this group. So what are those members? Well, the first member is this first term of x. I want you to remember when you don't see a number in front of that x that there's a 1 there, so you could put that. For my second member of my group, I'm going to let this minus sign stay with the 4. So negative 4 is my second member of that group. Both of those will get multiplied by the negative 3 that I see in front of my parentheses. So first up, negative 3 times 1x is negative 3x. Then negative 3 times negative 4. Negative 3 times negative 4 is positive 12. So plus 12. Parentheses end at that point, so these 2 terms are just going to move down. I'm finished distributing, so everything else just moves down. All right, now, distributive is taken care of. Time to deal with like terms, if there are any. So I start out at the beginning with negative 3x. Variable part is x, so I'm looking for other terms in this list that have a variable part that is just an x. Can't be anything else. So I see that right here. So I'm going to let that plus stay with him, and I'm going to put a box around plus 8x. These 2 that I have just put red boxes around are like terms because they have exactly the same variable part. So I'm going to do what this says and combine them. So I'm going to do a negative 3 plus 8, which is 5. And the variable part stays the same, so it's going to be 5x. Now, our next term is a plus 12. Let that plus stay with him. Notice when you go looking at the variable part, he doesn't have one. The last term is the same way. He doesn't have a variable part. Let that minus stay with him. He is a negative 9. And I'm going to do what it says and combine the two that are in the blue boxes. They are like terms because they both lack the variable part. So I do a positive 12 minus 9. That's positive 3. So plus 3 is what I will put in my answer. 5x plus 3. You're going to have to be much, much, much more careful with your signs today, because there are going to be lots of negative numbers floating around here. All right. Let's work our way up here. We started out with problems that were not very complicated. And now as we go, we're putting more stuff in these. You'll notice immediately that what makes this next problem different is that there are two sets of parentheses. So distributive is going to be necessary, and it's going to be necessary for me to do the distributive property twice. The first time I'm taking the number 2 and multiplying it by this group, x plus 4. The first member of that group is an x. Remember that that is a 1x. So I'm going to go ahead and write that 1 in there. I'm going to let that plus stay with the 4, so the second member of my group is a positive 4. So 2 is going to get multiplied by each member of this group. So we'll do 2 times 1x. 2 times 1 is 2. Reattach x. 2 times positive 4. Positive 8. Now, on this next group, here's where I need you to really listen carefully to what I'm about to say. You can see this 6 that's sitting right next to the parentheses. But what I need you to recognize is there's a minus sign in front of him, and you are going, well, I wanted a highlighter. You are going to let that minus sign stay with that 6. So you need to treat that 6 like he is a negative 6. So always let that sign in front of a number stay with it, because that tells you whether that number is positive or negative. Now, what are the members of negative 6's group? Well, x is the first member, and we know that is 1x. And then we're going to let that minus sign stay with that 5, so the second member of his group is a negative 5. So we're going to take negative 6, we let that minus stay with that 6, and multiply it by each member of this group. So you're going to do a negative 6 times 1x. Negative 6 times 1 is negative 6. Don't forget to reattach his x. And then you're going to do a negative 6 times a negative 5. So this is negative 6 times negative 5. That's a positive 30. So plus 30 because he's positive. Now I want you to notice there, I hope you're listening carefully and really watching what I'm doing, because these signs are the things that you really have to watch out for. Let the sign in front of the number stay with it, because that's the sign that tells you if he's positive or negative. All right, now we've taken care of both of our distributive properties. Time now to see if we can combine any like terms to simplify even more. So I'm starting with my first term, which is 2x. The variable part is x. So look and see if anybody else has a variable part of just x. And right here we see it. Keep the minus with the 6. Let him keep that sign. And we're going to combine those two terms because they are like terms. Do what it says. Do 2 minus 6, which is negative 4. Don't forget to reattach the variable part. We keep it. We keep it the same. All right, now, when we come back up here to deal with these other terms, let this plus stay with the 8. That's his. So he's a positive 8. Let this plus stay with the 30. He is a positive as well. Those two terms are like terms. Why? Why did I put both of those in blue boxes? They are like terms because this didn't have a variable and this doesn't have a variable. When we are determining like terms, the variables are all that matter. The variable parts have to be the same. So we're going to do a positive 8 plus 30, which is a positive 38. I want you on these problems to take your time And be careful with your signs. That is so important. Okay. Next up, I want to do this problem. Got a couple more that I want to do. All right, so next we're going to simplify this. So to simplify, we distribute if it's necessary. And I can see here parentheses, so I know it's going to be necessary. What number is sitting directly in front of the parentheses? I mean right up against them. I notice that it's this 4. But remember, I want to let that 4 keep this sign that's in front of him. It's 8 minus 4, minus 4. So he gets to keep that minus. So that makes him a negative 4. Now, he is going to distribute to both members of his group. So who's in his group? Well, 2x is the first member of his group. That's the first thing I see in the parentheses. And then that 3 is going to get to keep that minus that's in front of him. So negative 3 is going to be the second member of his group. So when we distribute, it's a negative 4, because he gets to keep that negative, that's going to distribute to 2x and to negative 3, which are in his group, in his parentheses. Now notice that leaves this 8 up here just kind of hanging out. That's what he's going to do. He's not involved in distributing, so he's just going to move down and wait on you to get done with distributing. So move that 8 down. You're going to do negative 4 times 2x. Negative 4 times 2 is negative 8. Don't forget to reattach the x. Don't lose that variable part. Then you're going to do negative 4 right here times negative 3. Negative 4 times negative 3 is positive 12, so I put plus 12. Now at that point, distributive is over because both members of the group have been multiplied by that negative 4 that was in front of the group. So from here on out, we're just going to move down these other terms. Now I want you to notice that right now this problem has a lot of terms going on. So what we're going to do now is see if we can combine like terms. So I'm going to start with my first term of 8. How will I know who is like him? Well, I'll know who's like him by looking at the variable part and seeing what matches. Does this have a variable part? The answer is no. So I am looking for other terms that do not have a variable part. I see that with the plus 12. Notice he gets to keep that plus sign. And I see it with the minus 30. Notice he gets to keep that minus sign. Always let them keep the sign that's in front of them. It belongs to them. So we're going to do what this says and combine these 3 terms. We're going to do 8 plus 12, which is 20. 20 minus 30 is a negative 10. And that's where if I were you, I'd use my calculator to double check my work. 8 plus 12 is 20. 20 minus 30 is a negative 10. Okay, now moving on. My next term is a negative 8x. Has a variable part of x. So I'm looking for other terms that have a variable part that only has an x. And I see that right here. So blue box for him as well. Notice I'm going to let that 6 keep that plus sign. That belongs to him. So I am going to do a negative 8 plus 6. A negative 8 plus 6, which is a negative 2. And then I have to keep that same variable part. So negative 10 minus 2x is my final answer. If you will be careful of your signs, watch what you're doing with those, you got this. All right, one last problem. All right, in this problem, are we going to need to distribute? And the answer is yes, because we see these parentheses. Now here's where I want you to be careful, Because when we distribute the number that is directly in front of the parentheses. Here's what I want you to notice. The 7x is not directly in front of the parentheses. It's not touching it. Okay? So you are not distributing that 7x. If you were going to distribute that, it would be right here beside those parentheses. So when I look in this space between the minus sign and the parentheses, what's there? Well, I don't see anything there. So I know there's a 1, and I want you to put that 1 in there, because that's going to make the difference between getting this right and getting this wrong. So I'm going to distribute a 1. Notice he's going to get to keep this minus sign that's in front of him. It's 7x minus 1. So he's going to get to keep that minus sign. That's what we're going to distribute. And now I need to look at the members of his group. The first member in his group is 2x. The second member of his group is going to get to keep that minus sign. So he is a negative 3. So I'm going to distribute a negative 1 to 2x and to negative 3. All right, so what about 7x? Well, right now I'm not working with him, so he's just going to move down. I'm going to do negative 1 times 2x. Negative 1 times 2 is negative 2. Reattach x. Then I'm going to do negative 1 times negative 3. So negative 1 times negative 3 is positive 3. Both members have been multiplied by negative 1, so this plus 5 just moves down. So now that I've distributed, now time to deal with like terms. 7x, I look at the variable part, it's an x. I see that the term next door has that same variable part. Notice he gets to keep that minus sign, so 7x minus 2x is 5x. Next term in line is positive 3. He gets to keep that plus sign. He does not have a variable part. Neither does this plus 5 that's living right next door. So I'm going to do positive 3 plus 5 for a positive 8. So 5x plus 8 is my simplified answer. So continue today to distribute and combine like terms. Please watch for the negative signs because there's going to be more of those going on today. Let terms keep the sign that's right in front of them because that's what tells you if they're positive or negative. If you have any questions about this lesson, please let me know. I'll be glad to help.